Always feel like it's part of, some kind of television entertainment, music they're playing in start of the sessions. Well, a good lunch break, everyone? The enthusiasm was just graspable there. We're spending the next 90 minutes looking at the flexible energy system. And behind this is the Center for Intelligent Electricity Distribution that develops the electricity grid of the future. And we also have one of the social science-based FMEs, Norwegian Center for Energy Transition Strategies, that studies the role of the energy system in the transition to the zero-emission society. We'll have presentations for an hour, and then we'll have a panel discussing, delving deeper into the details. A really engaging 90 minutes ahead. I hope you're full of enthusiasm as I am. Let's welcome first off Sigurd. Are you ready? Bjarghov from SINTEF Energy Research, here to talk about energy communities as a tool for accelerated connection of new industrial demand. Welcome, Sigurd.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll talk about energy communities. And this is a part of the research project FINE, Flexible Integration of Energy Communities in the Norwegian Distribution Grid, which is financed by Forskningsrådet and a number of very forward-leaning, innovative DSOs. And it's also connected to FME CINELDI. And I think that already showcases to some extent why FMEs are so important, because it works as an umbrella to gather more research from a number of projects, and it gives a platform to show the research. So it's really functioning also from the researcher side, I would say. So yeah, I'm going to talk about energy communities, and I want to talk about them with respect to the electricity grid and how they can be used as a tool for accelerated connection of new industrial demand. My name is Sigurd Bjarghov, and I'm a researcher at SINTEF Energy. And the reason I want to talk about energy communities with electricity grids is because grid capacity is a very, very scarce resource these days, and it's also quite expensive. And two of the last NOUs, Norges offentlige utredninger, really pointed towards grid capacity as one of the major showstoppers for the development of new industrial demand and decarbonization of existing industry. And it also goes for other sectors, such as the building sector and transport. So this is a very pressing issue. On the other side, we have energy communities. And in research, these are like quite broad fields. Energy communities can be very many things, but it's like a bottom-up approach. So it's about engaging end users in the power system. And a subgroup of energy communities are solar energy communities, which are maybe the most known form of energy community. It's about sharing common solar installations. But in the regulations from the EU, they came with two directives in 2018 and 19. What's actually mentioned are the citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities. So the renewable ones are based on actually having some kind of local generation that is shared. Whereas the citizen energy community is a broader term, which also focuses a bit more on the demand and using flexible resources. So that's where I'm going to focus today, on the flexible demand. And note that the regulation says that the member states of the EU, and that includes Norway, has to create some kind of regulation for integration of energy communities. So this is not voluntary, this is mandatory. So what happens when someone wants to connect to the grid? Exemplified by a bakery that wants to connect close by a dairy and a cold storage. And these are three actors in Trøndelag. So the new grid customer wants to connect to the grid. I already told you capacity is a scarce resource. So the grid company analyzes the state of the grid and either says no, well, they don't really say no because they have to say yes, but they will say it will take 5 to 10 years and you have to pay a pretty big connection fee. So it's like another way of saying no. Or they can tell you, yes, you can have a non-firm connection. And this is something implemented around 2.5 years ago, where they say that you can connect, but we can disconnect you at any time. And they may inform you on the risk and probability of being disconnected, but they're really just transferring that risk to you instead of taking it themselves. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, because new consumers may connect faster, and if they are flexible, or if they don't have that high costs from being interrupted, that might be a very good solution. But it really fails to unlock flexibility that's already in the grid. It has to be the new customer that is flexible. And if we summarize these numbers of peak loads, we see that when you add them up, they are higher than the grid capacity available in the area. So this doesn't work. But for those of you who like duration curves, we see here the electricity demand. It's highly daily based, and there's less activity in the weekends. So this is one week. And we see that they're only above the grid limit very few hours of the week. And if you sort those hours, which is the green bluish curve, it's actually just 10 hours. 10 hours, there's a problem. The rest of the time, there's no problem. So shouldn't this be solvable? I think so, and I think energy communities might be the solution. So the grid companies, they are quite risk averse, and they have very few tools to be flexible. And they have the responsibility for delivering electricity. And non-firm connections are efficient if the connecting customer is flexible, but it fails to unlock flexibility from the existing nearby grid customers. So what we're suggesting is a type of coordinated approach that so it kind of forms an energy community, and then it's up to the community to stay below this grid capacity limit. And what this represents is kind of a decentralization of risk. And what does it mean? Well, it means that the risk-averse DSO has few options to deal with new connections, but energy communities may be innovative actors that can develop some kind of solution for coordinating this with flexibility and IT systems. And if you're sufficiently flexible or happy to take risk, the more suited you are for this approach, because you can actually deal with the challenge. So if you're above this kind of tipping point, then we would say that this is a good approach. So we tested it with an energy community approach, where the energy community manager has the relation with the DSO and organizes a local market for sharing capacity. So what does this bring to the table? Well, energy communities are a legal unit, which means that it's easier for the DSO to manage communication with them rather than normal end consumers. Legal entities, and then they can bring flexibility to the table. So in this case, the cold storage has thermal flexibility. The dairy used to have a gas to heat water. Now they have electricity, but they can actually do fuel switching and go back. But it's very few hours of the year, so it doesn't increase carbon emissions that much. And the bakery, which is a new customer, is not flexible, but the other ones are. So if you combine this with a coordinated non-firm connection, like a coordinated approach, and this local market which coordinates the capacity use, you can solve this issue. But this basically means putting grid capacity in the market, which hasn't really been done, and it's a bit of a scary thing for the DSOs. So we asked ourselves, like, what about the business model? Like, how can that actually work? And to do that, we formulated an equilibrium model, which is basically a game theoretic model based on some Nash equilibria. And we found that if you use this approach, you can check if all actors are actually interested to do to share this capacity and to trade and to use flexibility. So if the price is right, they will make the necessary action. And this is to check that the concept is not just technically feasible, it also has incentive compatibility. So for the peak load week, we see that whenever there is no grid congestion, or there's no demand above the limit of 6 megawatts, nothing happens, because why trade capacity when there's no problem in the grid? But if we zoom in on the first 48 hours, which are the crucial ones, we can really see that the original load was 6.6 megawatts, so a bit too high. If there was no local market, they will respond by trying to minimize their individual peak load, but not the peak load of the community as a whole. But if you add this local market on top where they share capacity, you can really see that they stick to the limit of 6 megawatts. So this works relatively well. And then on the economic side, we can see the bakery rents the capacity from the dairy and the cold storage, because the capacity rights already are the dairy and the cold storage already had the capacity rights, whereas the bakery didn't. And those are represented by red bars. The other ones are just costs related to buying electricity, whereas the red bars are the costs for renting capacity. So the bakery pays a bit more, and the dairy and cold storage can sell this capacity and gain revenue. So the incentive should be there. And the flexibility that's required to stay below this grid limit is only required 10 hours during the week, and this is the peak load week. So I think over the year it was something like 20 hours. So even if you have to use some gas to solve this problem, it's not a huge deal. So it just shows the power of coordination. Then you can fit a lot more into the grid and increase the grid hosting capacity. So my main conclusions are energy communities may reduce grid connection queues and increase the grid hosting capacity. Currently, the regulation from Reguleringsmyndigheten for Energi, the RME, the regulator, focuses on incentives for sharing surplus generation, but not so much for sharing capacity, which I think is a shame because that's actually a very pressing issue, and it's just as important as sharing generation. But there are some issues with this kind of approach. You need a sound market design, and some development in regulation is necessary. You need maybe some long-term contracts to make sure that there's no market power abuse, or it needs a bit of further work, but the potential is definitely there. And with 5 seconds on the clock, I thank you for your attention. And I wrote about this in a blog post in the SINTEF blog if you want to read more about it. Thanks.
Not too shabby, 5 seconds, and you spent them well as well. Thank you. What I didn't mention earlier is that we have open for questions from the audience as well during this session. So if you use Slido, hope you know that from before. Slido.com is the web address, and the entry code is FME. Share your question there, and we'll try to include it in the panel discussion at the end of the session. So, but of course, if you want to discuss further with the speakers, you can address them in the breaks as well. But if you feel that there's something relevant to the plenary, then write it up there. Next speaker. Faster grid connection of fast charging stations is the title. Aurora Flataker.
Okay. Hello. I'm going to talk about fast charging stations and how they can be connected faster. I am a PhD candidate in a project called FUTURE, which is a KSP project connected to the FME CINELDI. Here are the research partners, or the partners of the project. And the topic of the project is high-power charging infrastructure for road transport. And we'll look at different aspects of that in the project. But I will talk about grid connections of new fast charging stations. And I chose that topic because last month, FUTURE, together with another project, for Shell, organized a workshop with the same name and the same topic as my presentation today. And we are currently also working on a memo summarizing the discussions from this workshop and also some takeaways from there. So I will talk a bit about it, and for those who think it's relevant, you can look forward to also reading the full memo. Okay, I will go very fast here, but the point is, or the background is that we have a lot of fast charging stations, but we need more as we get more EVs, especially in the cities and also for heavy-duty vehicles. And here on this slide, I have put a schematic illustration of the different power or grid levels from the transmission grid that Statnett is operating and down to the low voltage distribution grid where most of the households and many of the consumers are connected. And this is just to show you where we are in the picture here. So fast charging stations are normally connected in the medium voltage distribution grid with their own substation and transformer. Okay, so now I will spend the rest of the time to talk about how this connection process works. And I've made an illustration which is maybe even worse than the one from Statnett said it was like the Statnett kindergarten was drawing, but here is my kindergarten painting. So the idea here is, okay, let's imagine that we have a charging point operator, a CPO, wanting to build a new charging station close to this burger restaurant. And okay, in this case, I imagine that he wants to build 6 charging points, each with 350 kilowatt, which is the current maximum capacity available for fast chargers. Yeah, and you see a lot of boxes with AC and DC. This is to convert the power from AC to DC, and the DC-DC converter is also communicating with the car and controlling the voltage and current that the car gets at all times during the charging session. Okay, so now we want a grid connection here. And one of the things that the CPO needs to specify when he contacts the local DSO who owns this grid over here is how much power he wants. And okay, if you take 6.350, you come to 2.1 megawatts. But he doesn't necessarily need to ask for that much, because the CPO knows that, okay, during the day and during the year, it varies a lot how many EVs are actually coming to visit the station. And even if it's full, it's very unlikely that all of them will charge on 350 at the same time. And to give an example, I just put some EV models there and their rated charging capacity. And if you have experience being at the charging station, you also know that normally you don't get the full maximum power. It normally decreases as your battery gets filled up. So it is possible to under-dimension parts of this, this line here and the connection to the grid. So let's say we ask for 1.2 megawatts, which corresponds to 200 per charger. And then we ask for a connection to the DSO, and the DSO then have to check, is it space in the grid for this new charging station? Or do we have to do some reinforcements in the grid? If they have to do reinforcements to connect a new customer, it will cost money, of course. And part of this cost has to be covered by the CPO as an anleggsbidrag connection fee. And also maybe he has to wait longer to wait for the reinforcements. But as also Sigurd mentioned in the previous presentation, there is something called non-firm connection, which is an option that could potentially speed up the process and reduce the connection cost. Then the CPO and the DSO can agree on some terms for connection that the CPO is agreeing that he can be disconnected in some events. And this could, for instance, be if there is some faults on some specific components in the grid, the CPO can be disconnected. And okay, this is not shown in this illustration, but often there can be some reconnection possibilities. For instance, when the tree falls over the line, like here, so that some of these households and some of the customers can receive the power back quite quickly, while the DSO is figuring out where this tree is and removing it and restoring the normal operation. But maybe this reconfiguration is not dimensioned to also serving the load from the charging station. And then with this non-firm agreement, then the charging operator is agreeing that he will get 0 until this tree is removed and everything is fine again. And it's also possible to imagine that instead of getting 0, he can maybe get a bit, which will be helpful for charging at least the EVs a bit while waiting. Okay, so this is a bit overview of the connection process and the possibility of non-firm connection to speed up the process a bit. And then I will also end, maybe I will switch side to not cover up the points here. Here are some of the points that we discussed in this workshop and that is being worked on to also speed up the connection process more. One thing is early communication between the actors, the CPO, the DSO, maybe Statens Vegvesen, other actors. And that can help for, first of all, maybe for the CPO to also consider grid constraints when he considers the connection in the first place. And there also exist some solutions like WhatsApp, maybe some of you have heard of it, which is a capacity map where the DSO posts where there is available capacity, which is not so many places, unfortunately, but at least it's helpful to know where you should try to connect to the grid. Another point is about standardization and clarity, or it's more like to make it easier to understand, more transparent, how this process works, how the DSO is considering what is a technical feasible or driftsmessig forsvarlig in Norwegian, for those of you who knows. And also about the technical solution for the grid interface. And when it comes to this non-firm connection, it's not used that much for fast charging station yet, but it could be used more. But there are also some things we discussed there, how it can be done more efficiently, because the CPOs, they are located, or they want to build charging stations in many places and are in contact with many different DSOs. And the DSOs do things a bit differently. So, so to make things a bit more streamlined and standard and easy to understand and equal among different areas is useful also to speed up the process. And for this non-firm connection, one important point is also, which is not really solved yet, I think, what is the optimal solution there, is how this disconnection should be done. Should it be a remotely controlled circuit breaker operated from the operation center from the DSO that they can just disconnect? Or should it be some other solution, for instance, something called Open ADR, which is like demand response solution communication thing. That has also some other pros and cons that I don't have time to talk about. So I think I will end there, and then you can read more in the memo or talk to me later if you want to know more. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. I hope they have good food at the burger joint, because it seems like the customer might be needed to be patient at some points. There are questions coming in through slido.com, and use the code FME to enter. So Sigurd already has a few questions relevant to his presentation. I guess you'll receive some too, Aurora. Now, over to Statnett, and flexibility at the system level is the title for Bjørn Bakken. Where are you, Bjørn? Already here. Yeah. Welcome, Bjørn.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bjørn Bakken. I'm head of a section called Reserves and Flexibility in Statnett, just on target for this audience, I hope. Also, thank you very much for the invitation to come to talk to you today. With a past history in SINTEF for many years, I was part of the teams making the first FME applications back in 2008, 2009. So it's very good to see that this community is growing and really developing things. So I will start off with some, let's call them maybe obvious truths, but it's still necessary to state them. We see now the biggest transition in history in the European power systems. All of these renewables and new technologies, flexible customers, everything is coming like a tidal wave. At the same time, in the TSO community, we are still implementing a lot of new common rules and principles for the operation. This year, just counting, before summer, we will open up intraday auctions. In the autumn, we will first go live with the flow-based market algorithm in the Nordics. Then in December, we will go to automatic balancing of the Nordic system. And then early next year, we are going to 15-minute time resolution in all the European energy market. So there's an enormous transition ongoing as we speak. And partly because of this, but also as an enabler of this, we need to have a more automated system operation. And to access enough flexibility is crucial to make this happen, to make this reliable and safe to perform. And not only balancing and congestion handling, as we usually focus on in the operational stage, but also to allow connection on new customers, as many speakers have already talked about here today, and probably reduce or postpone the need for grid expansion, which is the costly heavy metal part of energy transmission. But we need flexibility, both very fast flexibility that can react to seconds and seconds down to inertial level maybe in the near future, but also flexibility that can deliver over days and even weeks in cases of grid problems. And to give credit where credit is due, of course, Norwegian hydropower is and will, for the foreseeable future, be our main source of flexibility in the Nordics. But hydropower is valuable for many purposes, so we also want to see more flexibility coming out of other areas and other sources than the traditional hydropower sources in the future. So we used to say that we need flexibility as benefit to the system, but it also creates value for those offering this to us. So there's a multiple benefit out of this. First, we can see if a customer is able to move or reduce his demand, the customer can save money, and we can spend more or use more of the renewable energy coming from wind and solar, which can't be stored, and this creates better resource utilization for the society as a whole. Customers that enter flexibility agreements, we have seen 2 presentations right now on how this can be done. They can help so more customers can be connected earlier than they would be without this flexibility, so we gain better grid utilization. And last but not least, if customers are able to react very quickly to demands in the power system, we maintain the balance of demand and generation plus the congestion handling. So we secure the balancing of the system. And this last row, it's a topic for the rest of my presentation here. I hope you're familiar with the terms of TSO and DSO, the transmission system operator. That's us, the Statnett. There's one in Norway. And the distribution system operator is the distribution companies. There's about 80 or so around in Norway, I think. We have some customers today which are the large ones, the large hydropower and large industries that deliver flexibility directly to us in Statnett. But when I'm talking about new flexibility, new technologies, new actors, all of these are located down in the distribution grid. So this collaboration level between TSOs and DSO is really crucial for developing these new sources to the system. This has to be solved in a very positive and also creating value for all parties of this collaboration. Because the flexibility resource owner doesn't need to know what his flexibility is being used for at a given point in time. He has his ability to be flexible and he gets paid for it. But whether this is used for balancing by the TSO or for the TSO grid handling or for the DSO grid handling, that really shouldn't matter too much. By the way, this DSO grid handling is still very much in the starting field. We don't have much market development here yet. It's basically TSO and use of these resources today, but this is coming. So this is a figure I have adopted, or we have adopted from CINELDI, a colleague of us that changed her work from SINTEF to my team. So we have continued using this illustration, and it shows the importance of a complete value chain for all of these things we need here. Of course, the customers that have flexibility in processes, in small generation or in their households, they don't understand and they don't need to understand what the needs are of the system operators over here. So we need a layer between them. We need these new business models. We need these new services, aggregators, market solutions, enablers to make this happen. And of course, sound and a reliable technical solution to activate. And at the bottom of all of this, we'll need a regulatory framework which is fair and transparent for all parties in this picture. So how can this look? Well, this is a very simplified illustration of how it works today and how it can be. But today you can have aggregators that deal with a number of customers. I shouldn't mention too many commercial names here today, but we know that Tibber is offering to control home charging of vehicles depending on the price in the energy market, and also OSO is controlling domestic water heaters for customers responding to the price. So if this aggregator develops a system of controlling the customers remotely, he can also use the same technology and offer this capacity to our national reserve markets that we use for balancing or for congestion handling in the grid. However, in this picture today, we have a problem down here, which is the DSO, which is more or less blindsided to what is going on in their own grid, because these customers are in the DSO grid, but the DSO doesn't know that the aggregator is offering capacity to us, and the DSO doesn't know that we are activating capacity over here and creating imbalances for his grid. So we need to do something that involves the DSO in a fair and valuable way together with our balancing needs on a national level. So one way of doing this is to build a local flexibility market here together with our national reserve market so that the aggregator doesn't really need to know whether he's offering to the local or the national or both. But the DSO then have access to that same technology for congestion and voltage handling, and we can access the same for balancing or congestions, but for this to work safely, we need to have some kind of logic in between that says, okay, this bid is not needed by the DSO, so it can be used by the TSO. Or that bid will create problems for the DSO, so the TSO is not allowed to use that bid for the next 2 hours. So this type of online live selection logic need to be developed and need to be specified for each grid area that this is going to be used. How am I doing on time? I'm over 1 minute left. That should probably work. Another way of doing it is to say, well, let's move all of this grid handling into a separate market so that the DSO will still have his needs covered in one market for congestion and voltage control in the grid. But if we take balancing and split it from grid handling, the TSO need to change our way of operating so that we need to go to 2 different markets, for one for balancing, which is the existing ones, and another market for congestions. So this will create more work for the TSO to establish a good and safe way of working. So these are just 2 examples of how this system can develop. We don't know yet how it will be, but that's a challenge I would like to leave with the research community, is to continue developing these things. So my last slide, where are we today? Just some keywords. On the national reserve market, we have opened this year for static FCR. That means that we don't need to have a continuous controller in the turbine that controls frequency response. Also, loads can contribute with static stepwise frequency control. And last Friday, 1st of March, we opened a consultation on a new market that we call FRR disturbance market, which is used for those that do not satisfy the standard products in the new setup. So this is a little bit similar to RCOM-B for those that know the terminology here. That is a little bit limited resources that are not so flexible. And we will also reduce the bid size in all markets, first down to 1 megawatt level and maybe even lower as we go. But this is yellow because we haven't been able to do this yet. We're getting there. On the aggregator level, this year FME allowed us to specify the balancing service provider role so that you can now offer services to us without being a balance responsible party, which is a more challenging role to have. This is now possible from next year on. And this is one step on the way to a fully independent aggregator role, which is completely independent. We are not there yet. So the remaining key questions are the effective market design. How will we make these three elements work together in a safe and efficient way? And then we have a kind of a spider web over here, which we call flexibility register, so that we should know which one of these suppliers should get remunerated when we order a single bid from the aggregator can activate 1,000 components over here. So we need to know who is going to get paid and which BRP is not going to be penalized for that activation, etc. So this is quite a complex data source. And finally, if this is also going to be used live, the DSO has a congestion in a given line. So he needs to know this is an aggregated bid. There are 1,000 components in that bid. Are they behind the congestion or are they above the congestion? That needs to be known if he wants to activate it for congestion handling. So we also need the grid model that says something about where these components are. So a lot of yellow areas still, a lot of interesting research to work with. We are doing our part in Statnett, but being a national TSO, we have to do things in our own speed. So I very much welcome research contributions in this area for the coming time period, for the next FME period. So I'm curious to see what the Research Council concludes on the 11th, I think it was, of April. Thank you.
Thank you, Bjørn. And we'll see you again for the panel discussion. And Sigurd is answering questions on Slido. I don't know if, Rula, you're in there as well. The chat is going on. So stimulating to see both the physical version and the virtual version of the discussion going on simultaneously. Slido.com, use the code FME, and you'll see the questions and answers going forth there. We're switching now from the CINELDI perspective to the NTRANS perspective, and the topic is power market designs and the role of flexibility providers. Next up is a duet, where we are going to talk about intraday markets and the integration of flexibility markets into the Norwegian power market. Felipe van de Sande Arajo, is that remotely close to good enough? And Ehsan Nukandi, is that remotely nearby? Right pronunciation of your name?
Ehsan Nukandi, but that's
okay. Very good.
That was really close. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Today, together with my colleague Felipe Arajo, we are going to present a new market mechanism, which called Preflex. The Preflex market is a part of PowerDig project. First, I'm going to give a very brief introduction of PowerDig project, and after me, Felipe will talk about Preflex market. So, PowerDig is a project aimed for integrate digitalization in short-term resource allocation. Here in PowerDig, we try to use the potential of digitalization in power system for better and more efficient allocating of our energy and flexibility resources in the system. The main goals of PowerDig is understand how we can use efficiently the flexibility that we have by focus on new designs of markets. Here we try to develop new trading mechanism, trading platform, specifically for flexibility trading. And by doing this, we actually try to study the effects of this market in short term and long term in the power system. And also, we will take into account the security of the system, both cyber security and also supply security of the system. In PowerDig, we will design 3 markets. The first market design that we currently are working at is modeling the current market change that we have in Nord Pool right now. So as you know, currently we have day ahead followed by intraday, and after that congestion management. And the intraday part, currently we have continuous intraday market, and we will have an auction base contains 3 gates, and we try to model it for the whole Norway. The second step will be integrating the flexibility market to the current market change that we have. The preflex market that we will discuss about it is an initial idea of this flexibility market that's going to be added to the current market change that we have. And the last step is TSO-DSO coordination. After developing a model for flexibility market, we will try to study how we can have efficient cooperation between DSOs, distribution grids and transmission grids for obtaining flexibility and having a supply secure system. That was my part. I pass the stage to my colleague Felipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. I'm Felipe, a PhD candidate funded by NTRANS, and I think this presentation that I'm going to do fits very well. Tries to bridge some of the gaps that Sigurd presented and Bjorn as well. Luckily, in the level of research that I'm working on, I don't have to deal with all the complexities that you brought up, Bjorn, but bear with me, I have some interesting results to present. Before that, I would like to say that NTRANS is a center that is very much focused on the social aspects of the transition, and we have done this user case in the last 2 years, which is called Integrated Markets for Energy and Flexibility, that has a very broad overview of everything that is going on. We had a lot of participation from industry and research centers. And we had a policy brief published in the NTRANS website recently in Norwegian, so I will direct you to it if you want to learn more of what we are doing in that area. But what I want to present today is work that is also a fruit of this user case, and it's the preflex market. It's a market design for this local flexibility. So we start with focus on the wind producers, and the wind producers can sell their energies in the day ahead or intraday markets, but they have a problem, which is uncertainty. And when they have forecast errors, they have to correct the production in the balancing markets, normally using system reserves, which can be expensive. Enter the distributed flexible resources, the prosumers. And then they can be aggregated, and we envision that they can offer this service, which is a private market-based capacity service, which we're calling here as a preflex market, which will have theoretically a lower cost and could be activated by the wind producers when they need balancing in the real time. So in this paper, we are looking at the effect of this conceptualized market in the wind producers, the prosumers, and the system operator. So we have data from NVE on the local flexibility, and we are looking at water heaters, space heating, and electric vehicles in this work. And we start by doing a quantitative regression of the forecast errors of the wind producers, and we use this to build our stochastic model, in which we test the optimal revenue for the distributed energy resources. And we have run in 2 different settings, in the summer and the winter. And you can see by running our model for different price cost estimates, we see that maximum revenue for the distributed energy resources is around 30% of the day-ahead price. And it makes sense that it's lower than the day-ahead price, because for once we are assuming that those resources cannot participate directly in the market because they don't have the capacity, or they cannot be certified. And for a second reason, they are not going to be activated all the time. And with that data, we then look at the cost of the wind producer. So we have business as usual and the preflex. And you can see that by introducing the preflex, the cost of the wind producers is always reduced. So we have a total of 12 runs of our model. And this one is where we see the biggest reduction. So in the columns here, you can see we have different assumptions for the intraday price, where it's usually the case where the wind producer will balance his forecast. And in the case or randomly, it could not have available the resources that it needs, which we label the illiquid market, then the preflex will make more difference. So to sum up our findings, we can look at cost reduction for the wind producer at around 19% in the best case. Flexibility for those distributed energy resources will be activated around 38 or 56% of the time. We can see in the perspective of the system operator a significant reduction of the medium system imbalances, but a peak system imbalance remains the same. So we still need all the mechanisms that we have now as a reserve capacity market. But this complementary market that would run in parallel of the existing structure would offer benefit for the system as a whole. And that is what I had to present today. Thank you.
Guys, Felipe and Ehsan, thank you. So, the next presentation is from Maria Lavrotic. Yes. Effects of end-user participation under a TSO-DSO coordination scheme for Norway. Let's go, Maria.
Thank you very much. So thanks a lot for being here. It's a pleasure. And I'm happy to present the joint work of NTRANS and CINELDI, actually, in collaboration with Pedro and PhD student Tony Yen, funded by CINELDI, who is the real mastermind behind the model. So I'm here just to take credit. The motivation for this study is actually to look into the potential flexibility of active end users, so the households, on the transmission level in a framework with the TSO-DSO coordination. And after Bjorn's presentation, I thought it maybe just makes sense to skip this slide because he actually made a very good case for studying this, that the infuse of all the distributed flexible resources on the distribution level raises actually, 2 questions. First, we need more flexibility. And second, in order to be able to utilize the flexibility on the transmission level, we need some sort of coordination between TSO and DSO. So in this project, we're focusing on the role of active end users in redispatch, so for handling congestion management on the transmission level, and actually investigate how this fits into the bigger picture of more need for redispatch in the power market, where this hypothetical sort of TSO-DSO coordination actually exists. So the questions we ask is that to what extent end users actually affect operations of the power system, and what are, if they are, the cost savings that can potentially incentivize end users' flexibility in that regard. So methodologically, what we are doing is we're building a power market model for the whole Norway that incorporates a lot of different features. We look at TSO-DSO coordination mechanism with a day-ahead market modeling, redispatch operation, transmission grid, distribution grid. And the really great feature of that is the scale, I feel, because Tony did a tremendous work in terms of putting everything together and in a framework with a very high spatial resolution. So this is just an illustration how he came up with creating the demand profiles from the demand data and the density population of Norway, and using Bayesian maximal entropy method to create the end user demand profile with a spatial resolution of 10 by 10 kilometers. So this is great. And just to give you an idea of what kind of scenarios we're looking into, is, of course, the reference scenario, the status quo today, where we simply have agents bid submissions, so the large sort of industrial producers, hydropower, wind, they submit the bids, and then there is a day-ahead market, so the energy-only market's clearing, and then the TSO runs the redispatch. So in the reference scenario, we don't have active end users. In a sense, they don't provide flexibility. There is no battery energy storage, no demand response, and electric vehicles charge inflexibly. And we want to compare it with a scenario which we call flexible scenario, where there is a potential for active end users to participate in redispatch. And how it's done is actually exactly how Björn was envisioning it. So that DSO, or we don't really specify the mechanism there, we just assume that DSO is able to filter the bids that create problems at the distribution level. So the bids that create problems with grid constraints, they are not making it through, and the ones that do, they can potentially create an additional flexibility resource for redispatch, for handling network congestions on transmission level. And in that respect, we actually also run different scenarios in terms of how much of this flexibility resource do we have currently. So we have 5% of active end users that can provide this type of flexibility. We investigated also different size of electric vehicles and energy storage, so to test the sensitivity. Here I wanted to, in the last 5 so minutes, give kind of an overview of the type of results we get out of this model. So this is just an illustration of how the reference scenario look. So these are the results that our model produces, the average line utilization rates, and sort of the demand and supply nodes in different parts of the country. So you can see, for example, so we run the model for 2 weeks in winter and 2 weeks in summer. And the left panel shows the winter month and the right panel shows the summer month. So we can see that things make sense, right? Oslo is a large demand node, while the hydropower producers in the valley represent the supply nodes. And then what we want to see is that how that status quo reference scenario is affected by introduction of these flexible resources, flexible end users. And here you can see the change from the previous picture. So it's not the So there's a change in average line utilization rate and the change in average DC power source or sink. And the main takeaway here is that at some time slots, this is an example for a certain hours at 11 a.m. on 12th of January in winter, the participation of active end users is actually able to balance, to correct spatial imbalances. So this is one effect that we see in the model. Of course, on average, the picture will be somewhat different, but in certain hours, we can see that quite a lot of change is happening here. And not only the end users could contribute to spatial imbalances, but also to smooth out some temporal imbalances. And here we can see the residual demand of two specific DSOs, so the two specific nodes. And the one on the left is from Oslo, which is a demand node, where the other one in Rogaland is a supply node. And the reference scenario is represented by the orange line, while the flexible scenario represented by the green line. So you can see that the peaks and valleys are less pronounced in the in the flexible scenario, which represents the ability to smooth out the the temporal imbalances. Now, what about the costs? Does this create some sort of economic effect, the participation of active end users? And when we look at redispatch costs, we can see quite a substantial reduction for the TSO to run the redispatch operations, so to handle network congestions, and that's something that we expect because we introduce another flexible resource into the system. Just one feature of this model, in fact, that since the redispatch in this model occurs near real time, if end users provide flexibility for redispatch, that also means, let's say they discharge their EVs, so they provide positive redispatch. That also means that in the future they need to charge it back. And that feeds through into their behavior in the energy-only markets because they change their demand profiles in some sense. So in that case, we see in this model somewhat of a balance between the costs in the day-ahead market versus the costs in redispatch. And if we look at the total cost, so the total costs, system costs that are represented by both costs of redispatch and costs incurred in the day-ahead market, we can see that the reduction in the system cost is not as pronounced. There is still some, and of course, it increases if we, let's say, increase the EV capacity, or if we increase the percentage of end users that are actively providing this flexibility. But actually, another interesting question that we ask is, okay, from the system perspective, the cost reduction might not be as dramatic, but is it enough to stimulate end users to incentivize them to provide this service? And in fact, from the end user's perspective, the savings, if these cost savings at the system level were transferred to end users, that would imply not a negligible, to put it lightly, reduction of their energy bill, which is about 28 euro for the electricity during 2 weeks, while in the flexible scenario they get a reduction of 3.62 euros. And lastly, to use the last half a minute that I have, what we also did, so this is a spin-off of this project, no, not a spin-off, but a sequel of the paper. So we were also really interested is the reliability analysis. So not only looking at the costs, but also whether end users can actually alleviate some problems related to failures, let's say, of the lines, and whether they can be a resource to improve the reliability. And what we also saw in the other paper that these active end user participation can help to reduce energy not served in contingencies quite substantially. So, and I'm out of time. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And isn't it just moving to see that when researchers are still at the PhD level, they actually respect time and the time limits. We'll see how that goes when we now introduce not one but two professors on stage, namely Magnus Korpås from NTNU, Endre Bjørndal from the Norwegian School of Economics, and together with them we'll have Bjørn Bakken back on stage. Very good. A lot of questions happening on Slido. I don't think we can cover them all, but we can start with you, Bjørn, since you've already spoken, and we'll demand a bit more patience from the professors. There was a question from the audience. What can we learn from other countries on... You show a very fascinating way of visualizing what you're going through, this transformation. Are there other countries that are ahead of us?
Yeah, Whether they are ahead of us or equal or behind, I think you can find examples of all cases. And what is especially challenging when you talk about distribution grids is that it's not only different from country to country, it is different from valley to valley. So you would see that there are some countries have different approaches to how they engage with end-user customers and with distribution grids. And some distribution companies are very eager to take a role here, and while some other distribution companies couldn't care less. It depends also on how the grid is built. Is it a safe and sound grid, or is it a very challenging operation? So I would like to mention the new network called Demand Response, which is currently being drafted by NTNU and the DSO entity in Europe. We are part of that team. And this code is going to be sent for consultation by Acer now in this summer. And they highlight more of the DSO role, so that this code will point to more responsibility for the DSO for its own grid situations. So there are some countries in that work that promotes this solution because they want to see more DSO involvement, and others hold back because they want to see less DSO involvement. So a very long answer to your question, but yeah, I think you can see all examples of
any particular
different approach.
Examples, lessons?
For instance, in Spain, I have to be careful now because this is not on top of my mind, the fact, but I think in Spain they have separated out, like my last picture, the balancing markets from the flexibility markets. And the TSO, the national TSO, is doing all flexibility services down to the distribution level. While in Germany, for instance, there could be some DSOs that don't want to have the TSO involved at all, so they want to do everything in their own grid. So I don't think I will mention names for you. I'm not so certain about the facts, but you can find all variants on when you go down in the voltage levels.
Magnus Korpost, you're a professor at the Department of Electric Energy at NTNU. And the kind of general question for this panel is, what does this flexible energy system look like from your perspective? And remember, this is not a lecture.
Yeah, okay. So starting off with the basics. Kidding. I will say that it constitutes three different parts. It's the actors, it's the economic, the market setting, and it's the technical solutions. And as I see it, been working with flexibility from both the technical and economic side, a bit on the markets, is that there's a lot going on the technical development, and since we started CINELDI back 7.5 years ago, the technology development also with respect to data-driven solutions, but also and all kind of control mechanisms and even flexible resources being developed, especially on the demand side. It's more about how to use it. That we need to continue developing technical solutions, but technical feasibility, I would say, would not be a real showstopper. It's more of deciding what to do and how to do it. Same goes for the economy in many situations, especially for flexible demand, like low-hanging fruits, like flexible EV charging that we saw examples about, and heat storage and shiftable loads. It's not that costly. So it's more about how we actually organize the utilization of the flexibility, where I think that there are most answers that are yet to be like have more questions that needs answers. And one of the main challenges, I think, is that also Björn talked a bit about, is the coordination, and also other the PhDs, the coordination between TSO and DSO, the transmission grid company and the distribution grid company, because both of these they need these services, and how how should we actually make that happen? And because like in Norway, we have like 80 or 90 individual distribution grids, and they and with grid owners, and they do it their way. They should maybe be more like harmonized. As Statnett, you have to kind of deal with all of them in a kind of coordinated way. So trying to make that as easy as possible and not as complex as possible will be kind of my main challenge for the years to come.
Because there's a lot of layers here. And Bjørndal, you've been working a lot with market designs. And someone has to be the consumer's voice. I'm delivering that task upon you. All of these complexities that have been visualized here, how can I as a consumer have price predictability and everything I'm concerned about? I'm already charging my car at night. So I've started following up on all of the new incentives.
Yeah, but I'm not sure why you do it. I mean, there is no incentive for that now with this price support scheme. So I mean, we should make sure that markets are designed and regulated so that the incentives are actually there. So I mean, some of the regulation that we have at present, like the price support scheme, does not contribute to activating end user flexibility. As Maria showed, that there is a lot of potential there, but we actually pay people not to be flexible, which is a problem. So you could think of different ways of doing that. I think it will be difficult for the politicians to get out of this price support scheme. And once you have given a carrot to the voters, it's difficult to take it away. But I mean, you could imagine. And I actually checked the other day some electricity providers. They don't offer fixed price contracts anymore. So I think the price support scheme has sort of taken that out of the market. And we need to get back to a system where it pays to be flexible. Perhaps you could imagine like a menu of price support schemes that you could, I mean, if you want this price support scheme that we have now, where you actually paid per hour for the price above 73 øre, then it's okay, but then you have to accept a higher price on average. I think than if you're willing to have a more like the old one where you were paid on the average price. And also the grid tariff scheme doesn't help a lot. I mean, why is it sensible that I pay a higher grid tariff if I use a lot of electricity during some hour, when that doesn't reflect anything about how the system is doing at that time? So
it's not perfect today, but when looking into the tomorrow,
I was being very negative.
Yeah. How do we design the market that actually suits the purpose of the system we're trying to build?
Well, I don't have all the solutions, I think, but I mean, like the price support scheme, there were a different one. There are other possibilities. I mean, there have been chronicles and papers about how you could design it, and you could like have a menu of price support scheme that you could choose from. That's one possibility, for example. And I want to mention one thing about the DSOs that Magnus was talking about. I mean, whether we should actually coordinate them more. There is a reason why we have a decentralized system where they're actually left to take their own decisions. But that gives them some incentives. And I think Sigurd and the first two, and Aurora had some interesting suggestions for like energy communities, but I'm not sure what the incentives for the DSOs is to actually do this. And that has to do with the regulation, which gives them incentives.
I actually, I agree with everything you say, but I have a little bit different approach to the solution here, because I really don't believe that every single customer will be willing to or able to follow the prices and turn on and off his appliances. So I'm looking more for a business model where the customer, what does he need? Well, he needs the car to be fully charged at 7 o'clock in the morning when he goes to work. He needs his water heater to be warm when he wants to shower. He needs room temperatures and other appliances he has in his house. So it doesn't matter for him what happens to this appliance during the night or in the day when he is off to work. So I'm looking more for the business model where there is some entity, either a supply company or a third-party provider, something that says, okay, we're going to guarantee you're going to get your services, but we are going to pay you a certain premium if we are allowed to control your appliances. You don't need to know when we are doing it. You don't need to why we are doing it. You will get paid, but you will have your needs fulfilled in your house. So that we leave the technical complications to the professional companies and allow customers to have a safe home and everything you need back home. So I'm looking more for that third-party element where they, like as I mentioned, Tibber and also is starting to do, is to offer flexibility to us and payment to the customer, but doing all the technology for the customers.
Mm-hmm. But is there any, I think the Minister of Economics already said that this support is going to continue into 2025, the one where you get 90% of all of the cost above 73 Norwegian øre cents. How much is that combating what we're trying to achieve in designing a new system? Magnus?
Well, sorry.
I would say a lot, because customers actually react to high prices and to price variations in different ways, and also in a collaboration with Statnett, we also, through a PhD that is about to finalize, show that there is actually quite price response among customers, also when it's not like automatic, but I also very much believe in automatic solutions when contracted well ahead, so that you kind of know what you are you're up to. But this, as I see it, this support scheme is both, they're limiting the willingness to provide like short-term flexibility, but also to do more like long-term investments in either flexibility or more energy efficiency, because you know that it doesn't cost so much anyway. But
what was I going to say? I agree with you that there should be technology that does this, but I think also that those price differences that you see on your Tibber. It's pretty easy to replicate the Tibber. At least with sort of optimizing the spot market price. That's, I think, just not charging your car at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is a good way to start and you have timers on cars. So if you just know that you will pay for charging your car at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then I think I think it's also complicated to sort of have those automatic systems. It's good, but I remember we did a project with Tibber, and we saw that in their data, quite a few customers actually disconnected the smart charging for some reason. I don't know. Maybe they had to go to the kindergarten or just didn't like it, or I don't know. People have complicated lives and being sort of so when I have my EV, I want it to be fully charged, because I know that there can be like an emergency. I have to go somewhere.
Is the light actually blinking? It's a bit of ironic, isn't it, with the subject? But this is a classic near and long-term dilemma, isn't it? The politicians are doing what they can to increase support for their politics right now, because their re-election is next year, and there's not much progress on the climate goals for 2030, and we don't see the drive really. We paved the ground for through these research centers. How do we combine these two? Because you're talking about support, which is very popular, of course, amongst the population. How do we get them on board with a new energy system that is going to demand even more of when you go down to a 15-minute resolution? We have to think even more about the electricity prices per hour.
Yeah, that would be easily on to the social scientists that maybe in this audience today to look more into how can we get customers on board of this development. We as engineers or experts, we can easily say this is the right thing to do, but if people say I'm allergic to Wi-Fi or whatever the reasons are, they are skeptical, then we need some other tools. Many years ago, I heard an American talking about demand response before demand response really was on the agenda. He said there are 3 ways of making customers do what you want to. You can scare them, power prices, energy crisis, whatever. You can pay them to get it done, or you can just control them without them knowing it. So I wouldn't be so categorical as those 3, but we see what we are doing are combinations of those 3. It's actually those 3 mechanisms that are still at play. I would really like to have some guidance from research communities on what are the right tools we should use from the industry to approach customers.
This is what we call a good pass. Over to you.
Of those 3 options, I like the payment better. I agree. And I think people are smart. I mean, if they see that there is money in their pockets, if they contribute with flexibility, they will do it. So I think there could be. I mean, for a good politician, there could be ways of getting there. I think.
I agree.
But I don't think we should scare them. Or what was the other thing?
Control them without knowing it.
No. No.
I still think that if you can, many things can be automated without you having any, you don't need to care about it. You get used to it early, but of course you should then. You have to see some benefits, and then and from the examples that we have calculated, okay, maybe when we, like in this example in the last presentation, it's not so much of a payout for each, but for the system level, it means a lot. Not only because you save money for balancing, but you kind of. You don't need to build so much grids, which takes a lot of time. So it's also like a practical dimension here to activate flexibility. So maybe we just need to raise the payments more than what the economic, the cost minimization solution says. That okay, we really need to add. More money to the table, and then said, okay, then you can shift the charging of my car as long as it's fully charged before 7 o'clock. It's not so simple, so that shouldn't be too difficult.
Is it wise to tax people for installing solar roofs on panels on the roofs? That's a new measure now, I see. It seems like we're making regulation barriers for.
It's going so back and forth. When it was when the energy crisis started and the cost of electricity was like 2 or 3 kroner per kilowatt hours, people they were queuing up to install solar panels. Nearly didn't need any support, in their short term. Okay, I have money. I'll invest in this, and then you get the support scheme and then the tax. So it's. I guess that is quite confusing. I would have liked to see more exposure to real, the real cost of electricity, so that people have the choice, can actually make long-term investments.
You're nodding, Björn?
Yeah, I fully agree.
I don't see any questions from consumption follows habits. When I finish work determines when I can cook, for example. So what is actually practically possible to be flexible about?
Foodora. If the price is high, then you can order Foodora. Then it's cheaper than buying your own.
Not if he's running an
flexibility provider
to get to.
No, but in the future energy system, is this going to have to be curriculum at school? We were talking about prosumers, right? How much do we really need to know about the energy system as a private citizen now, in the years to come? because this is really, we're all paving way for each other. We're all making room for each other. If I charge my car at night, at least I'm not in the way of everyone else needing the power during daytime, but maybe the baker is making his breads.
So I think that young people and also pupils in the school, they are very interested in local energy and energy savings, and also utilization of solar panels on the roofs and so on. So yeah, I think that it could be part of the common knowledge about how to use the electricity in a better way, and also utilize both on energy resources and efficiency measures.
Yeah, a little bit back to what I said earlier. I'm a little afraid of an expectation that every single customer shall be an expert and being interested in this and understanding this. It's quite a high level to really being able to play the different markets efficiently. I have one case I used to tell that I love to tell. Maybe somebody have already heard it, but back in the 2000s, I had a master student from product design at NTNU. And we were talking about wall displays for smart houses. That was when the smart houses and the smart metering developed, and all of the commercial companies came up with small iPads with columns and graphs and curves and you name it on the wall. But she designed a wallpaper with a Java simulation of an aquarium. Well, the fish was swimming back and forth, and you have plants and water. And if the house was using wrong amounts of energy, or today would be too high prices, the plants started to wither, the water turned brown, and finally the fish turned around and died. Okay. So even I can hear my own 3-year-old daughter saying, "Daddy, the fish died, you have to turn off the water heater." To get us out of this engineering approach to everything and think completely out of the box, how can this be designed and how can this be developed for the grey masses of people that we need to have with us in this transition?
I also thought Sigurd's presentation about the energy communities was interesting. I don't know, maybe I would feel it more comfortable being controlled by a local community than being controlled by Statnett.
Thank you.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't like my neighbors to know when I'm taking a shower. But that's an interesting concept in a way. That then you don't have to know. There could be local experts that sort of manages this, and everybody in the sort of Sameiet doesn't have to know about the power price or.
Because so far today, in today's program, we've seen how business has to transform their ways of doing their whole business case, really. Because you need to put energy at the center of how can we find a way, good location, and neighbors that either needs us or we need them. And we can share the energy and make our own grid and everything. And what you're saying is that this is really the message for people to take with them also, that we all need to think as a community going forward. That's the nice message to land on, isn't it? Anyone else for a final comment? Moving the crowds?
It's a good ending.
Okay. Thank you to our panel. Let's give them a hand of applause. And smitten by the youthful energy of the presentations, I did a disservice to you, Maria Lavrutic. You're not a PhD, you're an assistant professor. But I think the rule applies. You're still not a professor, so you're on time. Very good. Thank you. That was the full session, and now we have a 30-minute break before the next session starts at 3 o'clock. Whether you're here for the just transition, acceleration or reduction, or on the other side of the wall, the roles of hydrogen and CCS in the short and long term. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice break.